solve the equation 6a squared minus 12a equals minus 1 by completing the square. If we weren't being told to complete the square and we were just told solve this thing, our standard go-to option would be to add 1 to both sides. So we'd have 6a squared minus 12a plus 1 equals 0. And then we would try and factor this thing. To factor these quadratics nicely, we need 6 times 1. We need factors of that to add up to negative 12. And we're not going to find nice integer factors of 6 that add up to negative 12. Right? 6 is too small of a number, so its factors are not that large. So when we take any two of them, we're definitely not getting anywhere near a negative 12. So it's a good thing that we're not being told to solve this by factoring. We'd be at it all night and we'd never come up with a solution. So instead, we get to complete the square. And completing the square is nice because it works for any quadratic equation that you want to. And it's relatively simple to use. It takes a few steps, but it's very straightforward steps. We just do the steps. All right. The first thing that we want to do is we want to get this thing written in the form a squared plus some number times a equals some other stuff, some other number. All right. Right now, we have an a squared and some number times a on this side, but we don't have a leading order coefficient of 1. We have a leading order coefficient of 6. So my first step is going to be to divide both sides of this equation by 6 so that there's nothing in front of the a squared. It's just a squared. Okay. So if I divide this left side by 6, and if I divide this right side by 6, here 6 over 6, the 6's go away and I'm just left with a squared minus 12 over 6, that leaves me with a 2 times a equals minus 1 over 6. We have a negative 6th. All right, so now I'm in this sort of form. Once we're in that form, what we do is we look at the coefficient in front of our variable. Our variable now is a. A lot of times we're working with variables of x. It doesn't matter what the variable name is. We look at the coefficient in front of our variable, so this b term, and we're going to take half of it, and we're going to square that, and we're going to add that to both sides of our equation. So I'm going to look at the coefficient in front of my a term, negative 2. I'm going to take half of it, I'm going to square it, I'm going to add it to both sides. So let's do that. I have my a squared minus 2a. I'm going to take half of negative 2. I'm going to square it. I'm going to add it to the left-hand side. Equals negative 1/6. And here, since I added negative 2 over 2 squared to the left, I also have to add negative 2 over 2 squared to the right-hand side. All right. What's this do for me? Well, now we've completed the square over here. What that means is that this quadratic factors nicely into a perfect square. And the perfect square that we get is a plus this thing, half of our b coefficient, so negative 2 over 2. Otherwise known as negative 2 over 2 is 1. Right? So this is a plus a minus, so minus 1 squared. Right. What do we have on the right-hand side? Well, negative 1/6 plus negative 2 over 2 is still negative 1. We square it, so we have a 1. Right. If I'd like to do this addition, which I do want to do this addition, I need to get a common denominator before I add, so let's multiply 1 by 6 over 6. So now we have 1 times 6, 6 over 6, and we're adding a negative 1/6 to it. So we end up having this equal to 5/6, right? 6 minus 1 all over 6. Now we can solve very easily. Take a square root of both sides. A minus 1 equals plus or minus the square root of 5/6. Let's add 1 to both sides, and here's our answer. A equals 1 plus or minus square root of 5/6. Right? And of course, this plus or minus symbol really means we have two answers. A equals 1 plus square root of 5/6. And a equals 1 minus square root of 5/6. So there are two solutions to this equation. We found them by completing the square.